In the area of border surveillance and border protection, we see a rising trend to militarize border control. This is, on the one hand, we understand because there is a perceived threat of migration, seeing migrants as being a threat to borders, which we believe is absolutely not true, because migrants are people, they're not at all a threat to public policy or something. But unfortunately, policymakers in the member states are taking this up because they feel they have to respond to some perceived threat, especially after the Arab Spring. And now in the whole Schengen controversy, we see that it's being seen as like we need to have drones, we need to have more equipment in order to protect Schengen, which we find is wrong. So there is a number of new initiatives from the European Commission, be it EUROSUR, the so-called Smart Border Package, PNR, etc., that are creating a trend of militarization of the external borders, also of the externalization of the borders actually. And we fear that this will have serious implications on fundamental rights. And it also will cost a lot. In order to find out more about this, we have initiated a study that the Böll Foundation has been we're very thankful that the Böll Foundation has put this into practice, and now we have more proof that EUROSUR and smart borders are heading us into the wrong direction.
EUROSUR is the proposed European border surveillance system, and its aim is to interlink the border surveillance units of the 24 EU member states so that they can better share and exchange information. But it also seeks to create a comprehensive surveillance system for the Mediterranean and for the coastal waters of third states around the Middle East and North Africa. The idea, the principle behind EUROSUR is that they should be able to track small boats containing irregular migrants bound for Europe, to track them when they depart Africa, and then to follow them in the Mediterranean with the purpose of intercepting them in the name of preventing illegal immigration. There are a number of problems with the proposal as we see it, but primarily it raises an ethical question. The EUROSUR system is going to employ every kind of surveillance technology under the sun, from drones to unmanned aerial vehicle systems, satellite surveillance, coastal radar, and it really, I think, sends a sort of message to the rest of the world that if you want to come to Europe for business or because you work for a multinational, then we'll welcome you with open arms. But if you're coming because you're fleeing persecution or destitution, we're going to meet you with drones, with naval patrols and with detention centres. As to the proposal itself, we set out a number of concerns in our report. Primarily, there's been no independent technology assessment, so we have grave reservations about whether this system will actually work, whether it will be able to deliver the technical capacity to do the kinds of things it says it's going to do. Secondly, there's a lot of lip service paid to the idea that the purpose of EUROSUR is to save lives at sea. But while there are extraordinary detailed provisions on how to identify migrants, migrant boats, on the kinds of surveillance technologies that are going to be used, there is nothing whatsoever in the regulation that says, well, this is how we're going to rescue people and this is what we're going to do with the rescued. So our concern is that this is primarily about surveillance, interception and the return of illegal migrants. The second major concern that we outline in the study is that the thing has not been properly costed. Just as there was no independent technology assessment, there's been no meaningful cost impact assessment. The methodology used to calculate the costs was extremely dubious, to say the least, and the cost estimates put forward by the Commission are far from realistic. They suggest that it could cost in the region of 330 million euros. Our study suggests that the true figure is likely to be much higher, closer to €1 billion. And the fact is that there's nothing within the draft legislation that allows for proper financial oversight or accountability for the way EU taxpayers' money is spent on this system. Finally, we're concerned that really this overall agenda has largely been set by those multinationals from the defence and security industry that have the most to gain from the implementation of this proposal.
Together with my colleague Mr. Ben Hayes, I wrote the borderline study for the Heinrich-Böll Stiftung and the European Greens. And I would like to talk to you a bit more about the issue of smart borders. If we would need to summarize our position towards smart borders, it is that it's an unnecessary, extremely costly system which is only going to lead to data protection violations and longer waiting times at the EU's external borders. We don't see let me rephrase that, the stated goal of the European entry-exit system is actually to detect overstayers, and it would be a useful tool in the fight against terrorism. Although those are actually what the claims are, but we think that there is actually no added value to these claims. Actually, we think that there can never be an automatic sanction applied to an alert that has been coming out of the European entry-exit system, and we don't think it has any added value as a tool in the fight against terrorism. The entry-exit system would create actually a huge database filled with the biometric data of third country nationals, and we think that this is a hugely disproportional measure to achieve the aims that it wants to achieve. We also do think that it is way too much, that it's going to be way too expensive, and that money could be used differently and much more effectively as a tool to improve the EU's border management. And lastly, what we have been saying before is this is going to hugely increase the waiting lines for third country nationals at the EU's external borders, so there are basically only negative consequences attached to the introduction of this proposal.
As we have learned from this study, there's lots of dangers going together with EUROSUR and smart borders, not just the cost, but also fundamental rights implications for migrants, but also for each and every one of us. Therefore, we will try to follow this, keep on following this in the European Parliament, amend the regulations and see if we can stop things like this that so much affect and harm our human rights.